My name is Mona Naidu. I am married to Vis Naidu, my husband, and we have one son who's going to be 24 this year. So yes, we do look fabulously young to have an almost 24-year-old. And what do? Currently, I am an abundance coach. But who was I before this? Well, I worked for government for 24 years before I left to go on this marvelous journey.
Yeah, I also, after 25 years of working, decided that there is more to life than just trading my time for money, and decided to choose a different path in life. So I'm busy helping Mona right now set up a business, and spent the last 2 years taking time out to travel, to teach, to learn, and just have a rest in the meantime while we decide on our next steps. So it's been a great journey so far.
What I love doing is learning, but learning about money, learning about wealth, learning about myself, learning how my mind works, learning what makes me tick. I love cooking, I love baking, I love traveling, I love doing adventurous things, and I didn't know I was adventurous.
In terms of the things I love, travel is certainly high up on the list. You know, as a young person, I longed to travel, and my parents didn't have the means to afford us that travel. So what I would do is, in my mind and using an atlas, I would travel sort of the world, looking at all these interesting places. So, you know, it's no surprise that I love travel that much now. And having a wife like Mona, you have to study. So, so I'm also learning a lot about myself, learning a lot by studying, but also by interacting with Mona. I think, you know, the 2 years we've spent together, we've learned a lot about each other and our relationship, and, you know, on wealth and finance and business. And I guess what I'm doing is also studying a lot about business.
Our money world, before we discovered the Wealth Chef in FFU, we were very good with our money, or so we thought, all right? Because we spent only what we had. We saved, we did not have credit card debt, but we did have a house mortgage, and we had car payments. Now, we were taught by society that every time you get an increase or you get a promotion, you buy a bigger home and a bigger car or a more expensive car. So that was the trap we had fallen into. And we had fabulous products that we bought from financial advisors, because we didn't know that we could manage and do these things on our own. So that's where we came from.
And then when we met the Wealth Chef, we realized, okay, but there's more to this than just spending. There's a thing called saving and investments. But at that point, we had just bought this home. So we were almost freed up the current home we were living in. So we would have had no mortgage or bond payment. And we decided, oh, we want a bigger place. With more money comes, a bigger house. And then we met Ann Wilson and realized, ooh, a mortgage and a house that you live in is not an asset. So, you know, one of the interesting conversations we've had with Ann was that we've done this now. We've bought this huge home. It's not an asset. And her advice was, you know, work with what you have right now. And I think we worked and we've come to peace with that, and, you know, we're paying it off at a much faster rate. But I think we've learned so much more in terms of the spend mentality to saving and investing.
And not understanding at that stage what money really meant. You earned it, you contributed to your common expenses, you saved, you went on holidays with it. And at that stage, we thought that the retirement funds that we had were adequate. We thought we were going to be super rich when we retired, only to find out that it was all just a lie.
In terms of our money story then, I think, you know, we knew we had to save. And saving was, you know, from our teachings from our parents is saving for a rainy day. But we didn't understand this thing about wealth, that just saving and putting money in a bank account was not creating wealth. It's just a thing called saving, you know. And it's only until we met the Wealth Shift that we understood the concept of compounding and the concept of investing to let your money work for you. And from then, the conversations have been very different in terms of every month we look at our income statement, and then every quarter and every 6 month and year end we look at our balance sheet, and then we suddenly see that in fact our wealth is growing, because when you look at a balance sheet you see the numbers going, and if you see a 20% increase in a year, it's like, wow, you've done something great. And suddenly you see that although you had a budget, you actually didn't spend a fair percentage of that, which is great, because then you realize all the money you have is not about just spending it. It's about trying to keep as much as you can as well.
How did I meet the Wealth Chef? It was me having an insight that I'm here to do more in the world, right? And there I was standing in my office, overlooking the High Court, seeing this majestic sun rising up behind this dome. And I'm standing there with tears running down my eyes. And my insight, my reflection was, I'm here to teach people about money. And then I'm thinking to myself, but I know law. How am I going to teach people about money? What do I know about money? And that's what happened. When I said that, wealth, money, why would I be teaching that? The Wealth Chef came into my life because I realized there's a bigger purpose for me on this earth. It was beyond the law that I was learning, right? And interacting with Anne opened my eyes to how I could serve people in a bigger way. Because my vision is that I want everyone to know the secrets about money and wealth.
In terms of thinking that you're going to be wealthy, but having these TV dinner products like retirement annuities and endowment policies, which I think we actually got rid of our endowment policies way back when we realized this is basically like a bank savings account, but you're just paying somebody else money to keep it for you. That we realized that we're not going to be super wealthy just keeping those products, especially once we started to understand from the Wealth Chef that the percentage you pay to administer those investments, well, not slowly, but very quickly erodes that wealth growth. And the money that could be growing for you and compounding suddenly becomes eroded, and it goes to somebody else to pay for somebody else's Ferrari instead of your Ferrari when you retire. And we started becoming much smarter and changing some of those policy decisions we've made to where we could now reduce the cost of those products. And suddenly we started seeing that the growth is a lot more better than what we've seen in the past. So it was about becoming wise and changing your habits and decisions to make your money work for you. You know, I think I'm going to constantly talk about that because that's the fundamental Anne talks about, is how do you get your money to work for you? So going back to how the wealth journey started, Mona shared, having that vision of understanding money so that she could teach it. And she suddenly called the Wealth Chef into our space. We went to the launch of Ann Wilson's The Wealth Chef book, and we met Ann Wilson, and I'm looking at this woman and saying, with funky shoes like that and this colorful very bright red outfit, can I take her seriously, So we listened, and I guess I was a bit skeptical. But when we brought the book home and both Mona and I read the book, reading the book, I think, made a lot of sense that Anne knew what she was talking about.
With FFU, now firstly, the way Anne teaches, she makes it simple and easy for anybody. It doesn't matter what your level is, whether you know finance or you've ever interacted with finances on a very advanced level. It doesn't require any of that. It requires a basic understanding of what money is, and Anne takes you through these simple steps. There's no convoluted way to do anything. It's if you don't understand and, then I'm not sure what you're going to understand. That's how it is. And for me, that's what any course should be. It should engage you. It should be simple steps, easy to understand, easy to follow. And then the other thing with Anne is that you have all those Q&A sessions. There's always support, and the community, guys. You know what's really important about any journey? It's the community you go on the journey. And that's very powerful. Now, what worked, right? We've always had a budget, but we did not know that we had to have a balance sheet, right? Now remember, we were two professionals each in our own field, but nobody taught us about a balance sheet. And when you look at your balance sheet, you know, it like really pops out at you. What's your assets and what's your liabilities? And then you realize, oh wow, we actually do have assets in the sense of what assets are. But nobody taught us that. Anne tells us why it's so important. And that's what this course is about.
Two areas that I'd definitely say were turning points for us. One was understanding and having that budget, but understanding that the budget has those 6 pots and realizing that 10% can be used and should be used towards having fun. It's a concept we didn't understand before we interacted with the Wealth Chef. Like, what do you mean? You've got 10% to have fun. You can choose to spend the money the way you want, and Mona has no say. That's awesome, you know? So I can do all the stuff I want, but it was almost mandatory that you could have fun. And I think that's a brilliant concept. Plus the whole concept of pay yourself first and the first 10% also going towards your savings. And investments. And then you realize, but there actually is enough money once you carve this budget out, and that you can save and invest, you can have fun, you can contribute to other people's lives, and still do all of that within the budget.
Now, the areas that of my life that has been significantly impacted by the Wealth Chef, by doing FFU, has been the area of contribution. I didn't know that it would be possible for me, like where I was at the time I started in 2015, whilst being an employee, to be able to contribute to somebody else in a significant way. I thought I'd have to wait for the future when I have millions and millions and millions, and then, remember, because that's how society taught us. But when Anne showed us how to set aside 5% for that contribution pot, it was like a whole new world opened up. And remember, my whole thing of getting involved with the Wealth Chef was this whole thing because I wanted to do more for others, but in a way that didn't deplete me. And that pot for me, that's my magical pot. For me, my magical pot that the Wealth Chef teaches you about is the contribution pot.
The constant reminder has been the why. Why do we want to create wealth? Why do we want to be wealthy? Besides living a wealthy lifestyle, we realize we have a bigger purpose than ourselves, and that's to make a difference in society and the world out there.
We've given the Wealth Chef book to so many people as gifts. Instead of buying some type of consumable, for me, the greatest gift you can give anybody is a book that you know you've been inspired by. So the investment in, this program and the other programs with the Wealth Chef that we have done, we have been rewarded, I would say, 10-fold, 20-fold, maybe even 100-fold. Because who we were when we started in 2015 is not who we are today.
So the return on this investment, it's, as Mona said, it's, you could say 10-fold, 100-fold, but it's actually invaluable when you think about who you've become. And the fact that you now have the ability, the confidence, and the choice to choose the life that you want to live. I think that for me is priceless.
The advice that I would give anybody who has come into contact with this invitation to join FFU. You see, for me, divine timing for me means this. It's only come into your space now because the divine timing is now. Divine timing is not in the future, right? So if you are interacting with this material now of the Wealth Chef, where you're being invited to join FFU, the time is now.
Don't wait till you think you're ready. You know, I think Mona and I and all the other students that have come through the ranks in the Wealth Chef training surely would show you that this different life is possible. You know, we think back to Mona and I having this curiosity, is wealth just for other people, or can we be wealthy too? And then you realize that education and the right mentor or coach and the right training, you can get there.
Anne doesn't just take you on a journey. She takes you on an incredible journey, an epic journey. And that is what I've got out of this whole Financial Freedom University.